What's up, guys? I'm EJ, and I'm joined by Kendall, and we're back post NBA draft to give our draft grades for the selections we saw in the 2020 NBA draft. Kendall, we're starting with the Atlantic Division. Obviously, me being the Knicks fan, you being the Celtics fan, this is a division we paid a lot of attention to, and those teams certainly made some interesting moves and picks. But this entire division really saw some movement and some bold decisions being made. So I think that this is a great place to start, and I'm very curious to have this conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean this is obviously a huge division in terms of the amount of moves that have been made and will be made during free agency, and I think obviously I'm excited as a Celtics fan to talk about the Celtics. You're excited as a Knicks fan to talk about the Knicks, and obviously we also have our fingers on the pulse of the Nets, Sixers, and Raptors as well. So this will certainly be my favorite video to do.
No doubt. So let's start off with the team that's selected first for the Atlantic Division. Let's start with the New York Knicks. So with the eighth pick, they took the Dayton high flying forward Obi Toppin. They did some maneuvering later in the draft, trading for an additional second round pick, and then giving that pick away. But eventually settling in on number 25, Emmanuel Quickly from Kentucky. And again, like I said, they did have a second round pick that they acquired after getting rid of it earlier in the day. They ended up trading that to the Clippers for a future second round pick. Kendall, for my grade, I'm giving them a B minus. Look, I was thrilled with the Obi Toppin pick. I know it's becoming a polarizing pick given his age, given his lack of defensive versatility, and quite frankly, to some people, lack of defensive ability. But I think the guy's an
And
offensive
his
machine.
lack of being a point guard.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it too. The Knicks have obviously an issue at point guard, but I felt like Obi Toppin was certainly among the best players in the draft. And when it came to that pick, the Knicks played it beautifully. They could have panicked and traded up, but the way the draft set up with him, Avdia, Halliburton, and Vassell all on the board, those are all the guys I think the Knicks would have dreamed to have available at 8. I would have been fine with almost any one of them. Oh, excuse me, 8. I would have been fine with almost any one of them, but to get Obi Toppin, a guy who I think will come in and play right away, and again, the Knicks were a terrible offensive team last year, so improving that aspect of the game, regardless of what the position was, I thought was necessary. Of course, he's a New Yorker, so I think that does play well with the hometown crowd. So I was really thrilled about the Obi Toppin pick. Emmanuel Quickly, I wasn't too happy about that one, to be honest, and that's why the grade dropped. If I gave them an A for Obi Toppin, I think the Emmanuel Quickly pick would have been something like a C or a C minus. Not so much issue with the idea of the fit and the need, because I understand Quickly has is a point guard, and he played point guard in high school and didn't get as much time point guard at Kentucky because of all the guards they had, and I understand that he's a great shooter, but I just didn't quite get the value at 25. I felt like that was a player that you could have easily traded down to get if you did want to get him, or just kept the pick you had 33 if you really wanted it quickly. There are some rumors that maybe he would have went in the first round, but just in terms of my draft evaluation, there were other point guards who also can shoot the ball that it just had higher. I had Tyrell Terry higher. I had Malachi Flynn higher. And I think even Peyton Pritchard, who we'll talk about in a second, I think that would have been an interesting conversation between those two guys. So, the Quickly pick I wasn't crazy about. You talk about CAA, you talk about Kentucky. I worried about that guy into the mix there. So my grade then for the Knicks fell a little bit to a B minus because of that.
Yeah. For me, I'm gonna give the Knicks a B. I agree. I really like the Toppin pick. Toppin's not even my favorite player in the draft. I have my issues with Toppin, but I think he is an instant impact player for the Knicks. I think that's something that the Knicks need because they're a team that obviously does not have a whole lot of talent on the roster right now. I think he's one of the best pure players in this draft from day one. So he can come in right away and be one of the Knicks 2 or 3 best players. So that's something that you always have to be happy about if you're the Knicks. Point guard, I understand the need, but I was not a big Halliburton guy to the Knicks, particularly. I don't have a problem with Halliburton necessarily as a player. Not my favorite player in this draft either, but I think he's an awful fit for the Knicks. I think, he goes there and, he's a player that needs talent around him and he needs guys to feed, and just like any playmaking point guard, like Lonzo Ball, for example. And going to the Knicks, his lack of scoring ability would have been really, really lasered in on. And that's something that I think him going to Sacramento, something we'll talk about in a future video, may have been a better fit. But so I like the Toppin pick, and I agree quickly. I liked Quickly coming into this draft. We talked about him in our Pacers War Room
Yeah,
video.
yeah,
I
we did.
mentioned how I thought he would have been a great fit in Indiana in the second round, at 50 something. But he ended up going in the first round. So it's not really an indictment on Quickly. I just, like you said, the value and the players on the board. I mean, you didn't even mention Teo Maledon, who, also similar size point guard, who I just think is a much better player. I think higher upside. Uh, Different players. So I think clearly they value the shooting, but I think it's the Kenny Payne factor, like you said, the Kentucky factor. Rock Nation has a good relationship with Worldwide West, and all these things kind of come together in a way that obviously makes sense for the Knicks. And then I really didn't. I'm really not a fan of the 33 trading out. I know they got a 2023 second round pick. Word is that they really like that 23 draft, which everyone does. Imani Bates, Victor Wembanyama from France, Dior Johnson, Jalen Duran. I mean, it's going to be a great class. But a second round pick, what is that really getting you? Is that going to be the difference in you getting Imani Bates or not? Is that going to be the difference in you getting Victor Wembanyama? To me, I don't know. I think you actually have a better chance of getting the asset now, and maybe that guy being good, and then trading that to maybe trade up in that draft. But that's my interpretation of it. It might have
Yeah,
been a cap space thing, honestly. But,
yeah. No,
and I do feel like they, when we look at it in its totality, they did trade up to 23. They trade back to 25, but really they got 25 and 33. But they really just didn't want 33. They rather would have had the future second round pick. I almost feel like, why didn't you just get the future second round pick from Minnesota? But whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, I settled at a B. I agree. The Toppin pick, very solid. I think Avdia is a much better player, but I can see the fit for New York getting a guy Obi Toppin, and quickly. I think not a bad player. Good fit in terms of what the Knicks need, but better players on the board.
And just one last thing I want to say, and I think you made a lot of good points. One last thing I'll say on top, and I know some people have also been concerned about his age. But, they've said, look at all these players that Obi Toppin's already older than. Mitchell Robinson, R.J. Barrett, Franklin Lakina, Kevin Knox. But I would respond to that saying, yeah, that's good. The Knicks don't need another teenager. They don't need another 20-year-old kid who we're trying to develop and we're throwing out a roster out there that doesn't have a lot of experience. And we know Thibodeau has had issues with young players in the past. Maybe I don't want him with a 19-year-old kid. So,
and Obi Toppin is a winner.
Right.
And I talked about it in one of our earlier videos. Him and Avdia present the best winners in this draft in terms of guys that are going to go in the top 10. The rest of these guys haven't won a thing. And obviously, Toppin didn't get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, but you need a guy that has a winning DNA on this roster right now because they didn't have that. So getting Toppin certainly to help that.
Yeah, give me an older, experienced player over a 19-year-old, 20-year-old for this roster any day of the week. If the guy has the talent like Obi Toppin, I was totally fine with that issue, that situation. No concerns about his age at all. Let's talk about the Celtics, Kendall. So at 14, they took Aaron Nesmith, the sharpshooter from Vanderbilt. They then also added Peyton Pritchard, the point guard from Oregon, at 26, and Jan Madar at 47 will be a stash guy. Kendall, for a grade here, I went with a B for the Celtics. I'll be honest. When I went back and kind of looked at my board and what I had them looking at, and a sharp shooting wing was just not part of the equation for me. That Celtics team better than I do. So that pick with Nesmith, I don't hate it because I like Nesmith as a player, and he'll certainly help. And considering Hayward's time on the team seems to be running out, or maybe he's done. You probably needed another wing, another depth, but I don't know. I think that a guard there would have made more sense. I think Cole Anthony, someone who I talked about on the other video, I thought would have made a little more sense. So I wasn't crazy, or depth in the front court as well, Precious Achiuwa or something like that. So the first pick I wasn't crazy about. I love the player, not necessarily crazy about the fit. Peyton Pritchard pick I thought was a little better. They definitely do need a guard. I like they need him another irrational confidence guy off the bench. He fits that need. The only problem with Peyton is that he kind of falls into that same category of the guys they've got. Waters and Edwards, and it's just okay, another late round guard, and let's hope that he actually pops. But I get why he made sense for them, so I was okay with that. So I went with a B. I thought it was a decent night for the Celtics, not a great night.
Yeah. So I went with an A- for the Celtics, and I think
Of course. See, I was able to
yeah,
be honest with my
A plus
team, but
plus.
somehow you found a way to give them an A. Okay, I want to hear this.
Yeah, A plus plus. No, yeah, A- for the Celtics. I wouldn't have picked Aaron Nesmith at 14. Personally, I would have went with uh, Cole Anthony, like you mentioned. Achua probably would have maybe slightly higher as well. But I think first of all, when you talk about the shooting, I think obviously last year the guy they wanted, not a secret, was Tyler Hero. They couldn't get him. They got Romeo Langford, preventing really none of the strengths that Tyler Hero presents. Completely different player. And so I think, and we saw in the bubble when he went to the bench, there were just so many guys that couldn't make shots. Grant Williams might have been their best shooter coming off the bench. When Gordon Hayward wasn't there and Smart was inserted into the lineup, that's a red flag. Semi Ojeleye, Brad Wanamaker, Carson Edwards couldn't make a shot. Javante Green. I mean, I can go on and on about the roster of guys that just couldn't shoot. And I feel like Aaron Nesmith is a guy that is a prospect. I'm not in love with Aaron Nesmith as a player, but I feel like what we do know is that him playing with that Celtics team is a much better fit than him playing for the Knicks, example, which was in the conversation, because I think him playing off of guys is much better than him being the primary focal point. And he had no problem being the primary focal point at Vanderbilt. They didn't win many games, but he still put up numbers. But I think him playing off of guys like Tatum and Brown and Smart and Kemba will end up making him a really lethal weapon, because you're going to get a lot of easy looks playing with that team. A lot of easy looks that guys like Ojeleye and Grant Williams missed. So I like that. And then when you talk about Pritchard, honestly, I think they just flip-flopped picks, because I would have picked the playmaking, the shot creating guard at 14, and then gone with maybe the more pure shooting 3-and-D guy late in the first round. They just decided we're gonna get the pure shooter at 14 and the shot creating playmaking guard at 26, which I think that long term, I think a point guard is more of a need because of the Kemba situation, but I think they must feel good about Kemba, or they just really feel good about Peyton Pritchard being a point guard in the future. I'm not sure about that, but I do like Peyton Pritchard. And I think if we're talking about an upside comp, we didn't do a comparison video on him, but there's a little bit of Mike Bibby with Peyton Pritchard, which I think could end up being a really good player. I think more likely he's more of a TJ McConnell with a really good jump shot in half court range, which is still a very good player, but just maybe not an all-star or a long-term starting point guard. But Pritchard, really, really, I mean, I think he's the best point guard in college basketball last year. I think I've said that for months, and I said it during the season. I would have picked Oregon to win the national championship had there been an NCAA tournament, and it was because of Peyton Pritchard. So certainly like the player, didn't think much of him as an NBA prospect, but the Celtics clearly see that there's another gear to him. Like you said, the concerns of Carson Edwards, Tremont Waters weren't spectacular, especially Edwards, and he fits that same mold. So I see the concern, but I like both players. And the shooting, shooting is not a concern anymore. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, and the only one other thing about Pritchard that I think was a little concerning for me, who's he guarding? That was something
Right.
Oregon played a lot of zone. They were able to hide him. There's no hiding in the NBA, so that's going to be something to look at as well. Again, I can only go high as a B. Let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets. So they traded their 19th pick for Landry Shamet. That was in a part of 3-team deal with the Pistons and the Clippers. They also got Reggie Perry, but talk about a free fall at 57. The guy we were talking about in the first round. I gave the Nets an A-. I thought this was a pretty great night for the Brooklyn Nets. Landry Shamet, I think he gives them security for Joe Harris possibly being out the door. I think this maybe makes it likely that he's out the door. I think Shamet is a really good player. For whatever reason, he looked great in his rookie year. I think for whatever reason, this unit, this chemistry mix that they put with the Clippers this year, I didn't see the same growth and same development. I think he'll fit better with the Brooklyn Nets because he's a guy that won't need the ball in terms of being able to be an isolation guy or a guy who needs to drill the ball a million times. He's a sniper, and he will come in. I think he'll get open shots, and I think it was a great fit. You weren't going to get that guy who's going to be as good as Landry Shamet at 19 for a team that's trying to win a championship next year. So totally understood that. And then Reggie Perry at 57. I mean, I think that's a steal. I think that's one of the biggest steals of the second round. I think he's still in some ways a developing player, but you can't, teach those physical traits. And the guy is 6'9", 240, 250, solid rock muscle. He's got some skills. He's a good passer. He's good around the basket, and I think he's shown some stretchability. So I couldn't hate on anything Nets did. I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I found out last night during the broadcast that Reggie Perry is Jay Williams' cousin, which it all made sense why he's going to Brooklyn. Yeah. And Kevin Durant still runs the team, it seems. I really like Reggie Perry. We talked about him. I talked about him for the Miami Heat being a possibility at 19. The Miami Heat ended up with a guy that's a better version of Reggie Perry, who I didn't think would be there. So, we'll talk about that in another video. But Reggie Perry, I really like him as a player. I think him falling really didn't make much sense. I feel like he goes to a different school. He winds up maybe going higher. It's hard to say because Robert Woodard went early second round, so he also was his teammate. So maybe it's not giving scouts enough credit. But I really think Reggie Perry is a really good player. Look, the Shamet trade, I like the move. I think Shamet's better than anybody you can get at 19. I do wonder if Kennard, I would have rather just had Luke Kennard if he would have just made that happen. But if maybe they like Shamet better. I don't know. I think he probably has another year in his contract versus Kennard is going to be a free agent next year. So they feel like having 2 years of Shamet is better than 1 year of Kennard, and then he hits free agency. So, that could make sense. But again, on the surface, trading 19 for Shamet, I think is a really good move, especially when you end up or trading 17 rather, I think, for Shamet. It was a really good move regardless because he's a better player, and then you get a guy like Reggie Perry who you could have gotten in the mid first round. I think that's great value for the Brooklyn Nets. So I'm going to go with a B+ for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, it was 19 that they traded for Landry Shamet.
19. Yeah.
They did a good job there. Philly. Again, another interesting night for a team in the Atlantic Division. So they drafted Tyrese Maxey at 21. We were on the phone talking about this draft. I love the player. Wasn't sure about that fit. Made a little more sense when we learned that they were going to trade 36 and Josh Richardson for Seth Curry. So when that all shook out the way it did, I ended up giving the Sixers a B+. Maxey is a player I think that's going to work in the NBA. And I think that 21 was excellent value for a guy like that. I was concerned because I thought, okay, they need a shooter badly. And Maxey, I think, will develop into a shooter, but I don't know if it's going to be year one. And I don't know if year one he should be a guy just standing in the corner and wait for Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid to pass you the ball and then shoot. To me, he's an attacking slasher who needs the ball in his hands. So I was concerned that he was going to be pigeonholed into being something that he's not already. But then when I saw Josh Richardson was going out the door and they got Seth Curry, then it made a lot of sense. Because a guy like Tyrell Terry was someone I thought made sense for Philly. They went and just got the guy who people think Tyrell Terry can be. They got Seth Curry, who is already one of the best shooters in the NBA, a true knockdown, automatic three-point shooter, and exactly the kind of player that would make sense playing alongside someone like Ben Simmons. Josh Richardson, they're going to miss. I think Richardson didn't shoot the ball as well as he has in the past, but his defense and he had some clutch shots for them throughout the year. So, that's going to hurt, but I think Maxey has more upside than Richardson as an offensive player. So I gave them a B+. Again, this was a pretty good job by a lot of people in this division. You fill a need with Seth Curry getting the shooting, and I think you get one of the best players available at 21. Another attacker, which is something I think they definitely also needed, because they don't have a lot of guys who can really dribble penetrate besides Ben Simmons. So I like this fit. I think they did a really good job. Losing Josh Richardson is the only thing that didn't put them to an A. That's not nothing. They're gonna have to probably get another defender on the perimeter, but still, really good job by Philly. They also got rid of Al Horford, which is not necessarily part of the draft, but that was a good move. So I gave them a B+ for that. They had a good night.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Al Horford thing. He said not a draft move, but A+ just in general for that. But not because I hate Al Horford, he's a great player, but the contract is the contract. For the Sixers, I agree. I mean, if we're talking just a Maxey pick, I think there's probably a B plus as a player, because of the fit. But then once you throw in the Seth Curry trade to kind of make it all formulate, I went with an A minus with the Sixers team. I think Maxey, I really liked as a player. When you talk about him possibly orchestrating their second unit as a scoring point guard who gives them more of that offensive punch. There's a little bit of Colin Sexton in his game, a little bit of Bobby Jackson throwback in his game, and I think that he's a player that end up being a fan favorite in Philadelphia. The energy that enthusiasm that he plays with for the game. And I think some of that could rub off on Simmons and Embiid, which I think also could be good, especially when you see that from a young player like Maxey. Could actually be good for those guys. And then when you talk about Seth Curry, I agree. I agree. He's just an excellent fit playing that system. Obviously Doc Rivers is gonna love having his son-in-law on the roster, which is gonna be great. But just an excellent shooter. Josh Richardson, I'm not as concerned about losing. He just had moments last year in the bubble where Sixers fans were just done with him. They were like, this guy Richardson is killing us, and so I can see why they went with rather having a guy like Seth Curry who can actually make shots. But Richardson, not like I said, defensively, we can clown him for sometimes offensively having his struggles, but he's still one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Guy who can also get a bucket at times, so it's not going to be a complete it's not a complete dump to then get Seth Curry, but I think that he's a guy that this is a team that needs shooting, and we talked about it in our virtual war room video that you really need to surround the Sixers and Ben Simmons, these guys, with guys like Bellinelli and guys like Redick, and Seth Curry certainly replicates that.
Yeah, I agree. Good night for the Sixers. Last team, Toronto Raptors. They had picks 29 and 59. No trade, so thank God it's made this more simple, straightforward look at the situation. They drafted Malachi Flynn at 29 and then Jalen Harris at 59. I gave them a B. I thought this was a solid night. Malachi Flynn was a favorite of mine, so I can't really hate on that pick. I guess the only reason why I didn't go higher than a B is really, this is kind of a caveat. I want to know what is the situation at the point guard position. I didn't know what the situation was. We did our pre-video. I said that backup point guard was still going to be a need anyway. But, considering, it sounds like Ibaka's out the door by all the tea leaves you read. And we know, Gasol been spending the rest of his career in Barcelona. They need front court depth badly. So, if they're bringing back Fred VanVleet, which is some of the stuff we've heard, I don't know if it's that first pick, if that's what I would have went with. Now, if Fred VanVleet's out the door, then this is great. I think that probably boosted it to an A minus for me because I like Malachi Flynn that much. I think he fits how they play and another very confident scorer slash penetrator and passer, playmaker. I think that he fits in terms of that championship culture they've established there. I think that he's going to be a good player for them. I just need to know more about the roster. So that kept me from moving them higher than a B. Because I don't. If you have VanVleet and Lowry back again next year, I know Lowry's getting older, but I can't give you an A for that because of what the issues they have in the front court.
Yeah, for me, I'd settle at a B plus because I think Flynn is a really good fit for what they do. He really is in the mold of a Lowry and a VanVleet in terms of his offensive game. He actually may have even a more dynamic offensive game than those guys. But he's a guy that's going to come in right away and be really good for them. It does put a little pressure on VanVleet. It's a little bit of an insurance policy, I think, in case something goes off with the VanVleet negotiations. And I think they'll be fine, with Malachi Flynn getting minutes as a backup point guard for them. I agree not getting a big in this draft, Jalen Harris, really can score the basketball, so I think they really think that maybe he can contribute for them next season at the 2, and I guess a lot of the bigs were off the board at that point. I'm not sure, 59, if you're really getting a big that's going to be able to contribute, most of the bigs would have been at that 29.
Killian Tilly would have been available.
Yeah.
He may have been someone that made sense given his shooting. I know the health is a big problem, but 59 is such a, it's such a a crapshoot. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it's a
may
toss
take
up
the
anyway.
chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I may take the chance on his skill. You know.
Yeah, Tilly could have been a guy. But if you're talking about like the real like rim protecting kind of guy, a real 5-man. I mean, guys like Oturu, who you mentioned in our War Room video, that would have been a guy you had to get at 29. Or honestly, you could given the Knicks a 2023 second round pick, and you probably could have got him anyway. For all we know, but yeah, which maybe changes that conversation. But still, for what the picks they had, I think it actually makes sense. I'm gonna go B plus with this Raptors team.
How do you think these teams did with this 2020 NBA draft? What are your grades? Do you think we're too high on some of these teams? Do you think we're too low on some of these teams? Make sure you leave a comment. Of course, subscribe to our channel for more NBA draft coverage and more coverage of a bunch of other things we do on this channel. Thank you guys so much for checking it out. We got a bunch more division to come, so stay locked in here. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.